I'm here with our family food expert, Alice Seufert, and she is going to tell us how to make pot roast, which is something I make all the time, but she has taken it to a new level.
So we're making a maple bourbon pot roast today.
That sounds amazing.
It does. It's really good. So first thing with pot roasts, when you go to the store, what do you buy, right?
That's actually, now I know what to buy, but when I was newly married and I went, I expected to find a piece of meat that said pot roast, and everything has a different name. So what is a pot roast
Okay,
actually?
so pot roast can be either a beef roast or a pork roast.
Okay.
So we're gonna do a pork roast today. So just so you know, when you're shopping, a beef roast tends to be about $5 a pound, whereas pork you can get about $3 a pound. So it's significantly cheaper to make a pork pot roast.
So what is the name I look for on the label? That's
So
actually
on the label, you wanna look for pork butt or pork shoulder.
okay. That's what a roast is.
Mm-hmm.
They should just call it a roast. I mean, okay,
It would
all right.
make it easier,
Moving
right?
on, yes, okay.
So, and when you're buying a roast, as far as size, you want to look for a roast between 3 and 4 pounds. And that's important because you want it to fit in your crock pot, obviously, but then also we're going to do some browning of the meat and you want it to fit in your pan. So that's the perfect size to cook with.
That's a great tip because I actually don't often know, and I get home and it's too big, or I want to always, I have a family of 6, so I always want to buy something big enough to feed my whole family, but I don't know how much. Okay.
Yeah, I tend to go more on the bigger side because I really love the leftovers, right? Okay, so let's get started. We're gonna make a rub for the pork roast. And what I like to do is I put my roast, I've let it sit out just for a little bit, maybe 20 minutes, and then we're gonna put it in a jelly roll, and that's gonna keep all of the seasonings in there so we can just keep rolling once we get the seasoning.
That's actually a really great tip because I make a mess when I season my pot roast. So we've just put this roast on this jelly roll pan, and it's going to contain all of this goodness onto the pan when we rub it and make it perfect. Okay.
And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a paper towel and just get any moisture off, and that's going to be important for browning so that we get a nice sear, a nice exterior.
Especially if you've frozen this and taken it out of the freezer, there is going to be condensation down there. You want to let it dry. Yes. Okay.
So as far as the rub, what we're going to use today is we're going to do cinnamon and coriander.
Okay.
And you can just put that right in the bowl here.
Perfect.
And we'll do some brown sugar.
How much brown sugar is that?
I have 1/3 of a cup in here.
Okay.
And then we're going to do salt and pepper.
Salt and pepper. I can see that.
And just toss that right in there. And then what I just do is put it like this and mix it all up. And then I'm going to just sprinkle it all on top here. And then we're just going to rub it all in.
This is, I can see how this pan actually is really helpful because
so you can see how it can
making a mess in my
Yep,
house
so you can just sit and scoop and rub, and then you can get all the sides. So once we get this all rubbed, I'll have you, Happy, grab the potatoes and apples and put those right into the crock pot.
Okay. So wait a minute, apples?
Yes. So
I use a lot of things in my pot roast, but I've never done apples. Talk to me about that.
Pot roast can get kind of boring, right?
Yes.
So you're always using the same things, carrots, potatoes, celery. But baked apples, especially in this recipe where you're using some brown sugar and cinnamon, you're basically making baked apples inside your crock pot.
So can you eat these apples after then?
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
All right. All right.
So get those right in there. I'll keep getting this all rubbed in.
Okay.
And then we're gonna get ready to brown the meat.
So we put this is another thing I've actually been doing wrong the entire time. You put the rub on before you browned it. I always brown my meat and then I rub it, but you are doing the rub before.
I like to do the rub, especially because I always like to use a little sugar in my rub, and that just really nicely caramelizes the outside. You're gonna get some really good, rich, deep flavors when you do that.
Perfect.
Yeah, so we're ready to do some browning.
Let's get started. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're taking this.
You ready?
Teach me how to use the tongs. Yeah. Nice.
Okay, so we're gonna flip this over. I'll show you how we're really getting this exterior nice and crispy.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to you about what size of roast you're looking for, so this is why it's important. We're using almost a 4-pound roast here, and so you see we have some space on the outside. We're not using a round roast that would take up all the space, because if we did that, it would steam the meat instead of giving it a nice sear. And so
we've got just an average size frying pan here. And then actually, how long per side are we going?
So I always stick around because we are using sugar on the outside. But I would say between 2 and 4 minutes. I tend to I like to sear at really high heat.
Okay.
So that's why I always stay close. But I'm really I'm looking for this nice crispiness on the outside. Again, searing the meat is really important because it's going to give it a nice rich flavor because we're using this in the crock pot and we're braising it in some juice. So that's why it's important.
Like once it's in the crock pot, it releases the flavor then.
Into the juices, into the apples, into the potatoes, everything that we have in there.
How much oil did you put in this pan?
I did 1/4 cup of vegetable oil.
Perfect. Oh, it's already smells amazing.
Yeah.
I cannot
It's
wait
tempting to want to keep turning it, but it's best to just kind of let the 2 minutes go by, let it get nice and crispy because you will get this really beautiful exterior on the outside.
It's about 8 minutes total because if you kind of think of the way our roast looked,
Yep,
we
exactly.
had 4 sides. All right,
Yep, and so
perfect.
We'll turn it one more time here. We'll just keep getting that nice outside going.
I love it.
Are you excited about this?
I am excited about
so
this.
good.
This smells amazing. What's next?
Okay, next thing we're gonna do is take it over to the crock pot.
Perfect. Let's do it.
Okay.
It's heavy. Pot holders are important, right?
Okay. So we have our crock pot all set with the potatoes and apples.
Yes.
And I'm just gonna set it right on top.
So you don't need to stir. That's another thing I always worry about. Like, where does my meat have to be in the crock pot? You can have the kind of additions under it.
Right.
Okay.
I always like to have everything underneath it just because then a lot of the juices are underneath. It's going to cook in a little bit of liquid that we're going to make. We're going to make the juice that goes in it. And then you can also, you'll see, when your roast is sitting on top, you can move the potatoes and apples, push them over to the side so then your roast can sit down and you can get the lid on top.
So we've got,
Yep.
that looks amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what?
Okay, so now we're going to get the liquid all ready.
All right, let's move this over here so we can do, because I know you've got this amazing marinade or liquid or whatever we're cooking.
This is where the bourbon comes in. Bourbon.
Okay.
Okay, so when you go to the store to buy the bourbon, so we figured out how to buy how to buy a pot roast, right?
Yes.
It's not technically labeled right. So what you want to look for is whiskey, is what it is, and then bourbon is a type of whiskey.
Okay.
Okay.
So we've got this. This is, oh my gosh, this makes me happy. Bullet bourbon, Frontier whiskey.
Yes, my husband told me if you're going to cook with bourbon, get a good bourbon so that I can have a drink after you make the meal.
Nice.
Right?
I actually like him already. Okay. All right.
Okay.
So then.
So with the liquid that we're using, a lot of times in crock pot meals you're using broth, but you can also use juice, and so we're using apple juice. So I have 2 cups of apple juice, and then I'm going to have you pour in 1/2 cup of bourbon.
Okay.
And then
I think that's a really valid point because I typically do use broth, but I hadn't thought about using, I do cook with wine sometimes,
Right.
which is basically what apple juice kind of is, but I hadn't really thought about doing my pot
You
roast
can
with that.
use something like bourbon. You can also use beer as a great thing to put in your crock pot with meat. So we're going to use a tablespoon of vanilla paste.
So we've got the apple juice in here, we've got the bourbon, 2 cups apple juice, 1/2 cup bourbon, and then a tablespoon of this vanilla paste.
Yep, get that mixed up.
One time my grandma gave me is she would always marinate bad beef or not top quality beef in vodka because it actually liquor breaks meat down and makes it more eatable or tastier.
So you have that all mixed up. I have 2 spoons here. Do you know what they're for?
What? No.
We really should try this, don't you think? We should
Yes.
try this juice to see if it's good.
Because
Got our nice bourbon liquid.
that is amazing. Okay.
You could shake that over ice and have that as a martini too if
actually
you wanted
could.
to.
So now
we're gonna pour that right in.
Pour it in.
So we've got our liquid. Last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pour in some maple syrup, about 4 ounces, and I can just what I usually look for is I'm gonna pour that right over the top of the roast like that.
That looks amazing.
Again, giving it a really nice sweet texture on the outside.
So how long do I cook this for?
You cook this on low for 8 hours.
All right. And this is an amazing roast, but I'm guessing we're going to have some leftovers.
Yes.
Do you have tips for me on that?
I do.
Okay.
So one of my favorite things to use with pot roast meat is to make sandwiches. But I'm making a little bit of a yummy adult type sandwich here. So we're using the maple bourbon pork. It's inside the sandwich.
Okay.
I have white cheddar melted on it. The bread I'm using is a Texas toast, so it's already buttered. It's really thick. And then the au jus residue that's on the side is actually the juice from inside the roast that has the bourbon and the apple juice.
This
could
smells
dunk in.
and looks amazing, and I also love the fact that you use Texas toast in the way I do because I love it. So can I taste these?
Yes, please do.
Oh my gosh.
Here, I'll hold it.
What's happening right now? Oh, good. So good. Wow, that was amazing. But I tasted the leftovers first. I kind of want to taste
take
this
a bite.
roast.
And make sure you get a little of the baked apple in there. I want you to see what that tastes like.
Actually sounds amazing to me. Okay. So good. It's so good. To learn more about the recipes we've made today, including the leftovers, visit our website.
Ground coriander is often an overlooked spice in your cabinet. Great for Mexican cooking, and if you don't like cumin, you can use ground coriander. It also goes really great with apples and pork and anything in the fall.